Welcome to Make a Scene with Video, where we explore everything and anything at the intersection between video and mission-driven organizations. If you are new to Make a Scene Media, we are a full-service video production company that helps nonprofits, agencies, and businesses make an impact with video storytelling. We specialize in really authentic stories that are told with trauma-informed and ethical production practices because we believe that not only can you change an audience's apathy to engagement, but the process can be healing for the participants as well. So video is a team sport, which is why we want to share with you some of the brilliant minds of our peers to help you increase the impact, whether it's in your communications, marketing, or branded content, which brings us to our guest, Kait Halibozek. Welcome. She
Hi.
is an impact producer and is the founder of Kait Halibozek Consulting. And so let me tell you a little bit about her, brag about her before we dive into what she does. So she provides strategies and implementation for screening tours, partnerships, calls to action, and measuring social media engagement to maximize your film's reach and impact. So we're over here making great videos, but if nobody sees the video, what's the point? And so Kait is the perfect partner to help you get that return on your investment. So welcome. And I'd love, let's just start out with what are some of the things you've done to give people kind of an idea of what is an impact producer? What does that look like?
Sure. Thanks so much for having me, Heather. I've been doing this work for about a decade. My company is going to turn 5 in May, and I've always just really been interested in the intersection of film and entertainment, whether that's long form, short form content, and education and social change. And so that's really what I focus on in my work. And my primary, little parts of the industry that I work on are non-theatrical or community screening tours and partnerships developed for the films in the issue area that the film is about. I primarily work with documentaries, but I want to be working with more narrative films, more TV series, maybe even a book or a theater show. Who knows? But there's so many different ways to use the arts to create social change. And I really think we're just kind of like cracking the surface of what can be done. But in terms of what I've done recently, a campaign I've been working on for, believe it or not, 2 years now. Very, very long campaign. But really, really rewarding. Is a documentary called The Quiet Epidemic. It's a feature-length documentary that premiered at Hot Docs, which is a major documentary film festival in Toronto, back in 2022. And the film is about chronic Lyme disease. It's part expose, it's part patient story. It's really an investigative piece, though, about what it's like to live with chronic Lyme disease, the controversies surrounding diagnoses, therapeutics, diagnostic tools, all of that stuff, but also wrapped up in the story of people living with this disease and what it means for them. The two filmmakers both have chronic Lyme disease, but the film is not about them. It's really bigger than them, and because the issue is so big. And what I've been focusing on there is developing partnerships with community groups, primarily Lyme disease awareness groups and support groups across the country. We're talking very small, like state level or even local level Lyme disease support groups who use the film as a teaching tool, because people who live with the disease know what it's like to live with it. But people who don't, their friends, their family members, everyone in their community, like, you don't look sick. What's really wrong with you? And this film is just an hour and 40 minutes that lays it all on the table. And after every screening I've personally been to, or the filmmakers have been to, people are coming up to us saying, "Thank you so much for this film. It's the first time I felt seen. My family members finally understand what I'm going through." And that's really the impact of film. That's the education part right there, right? We booked over 60 screenings so far. We brought it to some medical schools, some nursing schools, really trying to get that film in front of the new generation of healthcare providers as this epidemic of tick-borne disease continues to explode due to climate change. The fact that we're not getting those deep freezes anymore means that the ticks are spreading across the country. We're also doing screenings with public libraries. That's actually very new for me. I've been doing this work for a very long time, but never have had a film that is of such interest to these communities. And so that's been really cool too, to build up a network of public libraries who see the value in these free educational screening events that are then followed by panel discussions with local experts, local Lyme support groups, local Lyme literate healthcare professionals. Sometimes there's a patient on the panel to give that like local tie to the story. So that's what I've been doing with that film.
I love that partnership between the media, which, yes, we're all consuming content all the time on our phones and at home and that sort of thing, but making it into a community event, and making it both educational with the expert, but the idea of bringing in a local person to tie it to your community, that's a fantastic idea. What are the reactions of the people when they're walking out?
They're really moved. I've only been to a few screenings. I've been to some of the festival screenings and some of the local screenings around here in LA. But like I had, a lot of people, especially in California, are like, I had no idea this was here. And now I know I have to protect my kids, protect my pets. There are vaccinations for our dogs for Lyme disease, but not something that really works for humans. And then also having, like I said, those local groups that are there not only on the panel to provide, their wisdom and expertise, but also there to as a resource, as a local resource for people who are like, you know, I've been dealing with some weird symptoms for years. What should I do? Like, how do I actually go forward with like getting a true, more accurate test for Lyme disease? And that's why those people are there. They'll have pamphlets. They'll be like, oh, here's a recommendation for the lab that we use. Here's next steps once you are diagnosed. If it's not Lyme, maybe it's like another tick-borne illness or something like that. And it's just really, it's community building. Maybe someone else is like, oh, I need a new doctor. And someone's like, oh, this is the Lyme doctor I use. And here's what, it's been working for me. Like, people want to share their knowledge. And this comes down to like any chronic illness, you see this community building, you see it on Facebook, you see it on all social media, but then we're actually bringing those people together in a room in person.
Awesome. When do you get involved in that process? You've got people who have worked really hard on the film. They've gotten all the interviews. They've been in the edit, and it's out. And now what? It's a totally different field between making the film and getting people to see it.
Great question. Yes. So for this film, since this is the example we're going with, this one's a little different because one of the directors is a very close friend of mine. So I was one of the first people she told about her idea for the project back over 8 years ago now, believe it or not. But in terms of me actually like signing a contract and getting rolling, was about 2 months before the world premiere. So the world premiere was in May of 2022. So I started in March of 2022. And that way I was able to kind of, help them coalesce around what do they want their calls to action to be for people who are in the room? What kind of action do they want people to take? Is that signing a petition? Is that posting on social media with a specific hashtag? How do we engage the people in the room to take action and create change after actually watching the film? So that's why I come on early there. So we have all that stuff and all the collateral, the postcards, everything ready to go for the first time that the film is played in front of a public audience.
I have more questions to grill you on specifics, but did you want to chat at all? I know that there were at least two other films that we talking about, Turning Point and Skin on Fire.
Absolutely. Yeah. So never set out to kind of work on a lot of medical oriented films, but here we are. The Turning Point is a documentary, a very powerful medical documentary about Alzheimer's disease and the quest for a cure or a treatment. It actually follows a phase 3 clinical trial that back in I think like 2018, 2016, 2018, somewhere around there. So I worked on this project a few years ago, but we really wanted to raise awareness about the importance of clinical trials. Because a lot of people, when they think of a clinical trial, they're just like, oh, if no other treatment has worked, it's this last ditch effort, like an experimental drug or something. And a lot of people don't realize that, these companies that create these therapeutics also need healthy people. They need controls. They need people with family history, but may not be exhibiting symptoms. And in the case of Alzheimer's disease, which I did not know, it can be starting to form 10, 20 years before you even show any kind of symptoms. So getting people earlier, not only earlier diagnostics, but also into clinical trials earlier in their lives to then follow them for like a very long time. It's actually really important, especially as the population of America and the world continues to age. Lots of conversations around that coming and arguably already here silver wave. So getting families prepared and just really trying to find a cure for this awful, heartbreaking disease.
Hmm.
So that was Turning Point. And for that one, we did a lot of community screenings, had a big focus and push on bringing it to schools of healthcare professions, and including like gerontologists, pharmacists, physician's assistants. Because we found out they get maybe 4 hours or something like that in medical school about Alzheimer's and dementia in all of their coursework. So really filling in gaps there. Worked with my client there was Bright Focus Foundation, actually based in Clarksburg, Maryland, and they're an amazing nonprofit that funds research for Alzheimer's disease, glaucoma, and macular degeneration. And the film was directed by award-winning filmmaker James Keach, who produced Walk the Line and the really powerful documentary Glenn Campbell, I'll Be Me, about the musician Glenn Campbell's battle with Alzheimer's disease. So it's kind of like a follow-up to that, where you saw the human story, and now you get the science behind research for Alzheimer's. And then James Keach also directed Skin on Fire, which is a short documentary that's on YouTube. Anyone can watch it. And it's about topical steroid withdrawal, which is something I knew really nothing about until I started working on the campaign. And then after watching the film, my husband and I were like, I think you have that a little bit. So it was very eye-opening to how common this awful condition that is really like post-use of steroids, overuse of steroids can cause all over your body, and the trauma and what it takes to recover from it. And it's heartbreaking, but also hopeful, and got to work with some really amazing people who were willing to share their personal stories on screen. And then, through social media. That was primarily a social media campaign because that community is very active on social media, very similar to Lyme disease. So going to where they were and asking them to watch the film, provide video testimonial reactions and things like that. And we also had a letter that is still live actually on the website to send to the American Dermatology Association, asking them to acknowledge it as a true condition. So there's that part of it as well.
Yeah. So when you're working on these projects, you're looking at, it's almost multi-levels of calls to action. It feels like.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Like
Absolutely.
with the medical, do you feel that your campaigns to reach medical like personnel is working? And do you see what are the next steps after that for them?
Absolutely. Well, in the case of Skin on Fire, we were lucky that there's a couple organizations that really are vocal about this. The ITSAN, which is specifically for topical steroid withdrawal and support and awareness and trying to get the word out there. So they came on board, and they do a lot of work trying to like get the information in front of lawmakers, et cetera, to try to figure out some things around that. Our film was just like an educational tool that they were able to use, like it lives on their website and stuff like that, which is pretty cool. But in terms of other than that, getting people who are studying to be doctors to watch these films and, oh, that's really what's happening. I had no idea. We're very fortunate, especially with like the Lyme disease documentary. We've had some pretty big screenings. We had one at Mount Sinai. They have a new lab where they're studying complex chronic illness, including Lyme disease, long COVID, ME/CFS, fibromyalgia, Ehlers-Danlos syndrome. And, so the film has been really helpful for them to start to help their students wrap their heads around what complex chronic illness is, right? It's like a case study for all of these different issues. And, hopefully educating the next generation starts to change their minds, starts to open their minds.
So, I don't need to be sold on the power of documentary and film because obviously I'm obsessed. But let's connect the dots for people who
Yeah,
may not be sold yet that documentary storytelling essentially, interviews with documentary subjects, they can be like testimonials, they're case studies, but it's kind of bringing it to life. And I'm assuming after hours of reading medical textbooks that seeing a film kind of hits different. Um, I should be turning this into a question. What do you think is the benefit of storytelling through documentary?
sure, absolutely. I think I think you got to the crux of it right there is, real people sharing their stories will never is the most powerful thing I think we have in terms of communication, and visual storytelling versus, hey, just like read this, like listen to this lecture or read this book and come in and we'll talk about it. That's great. That's how school works. I'm not like, like that's how I learn most things. But as someone who studied film, being able to see something visually and learn so much and also be entertained in like 90 or 120 minutes, you really have an opportunity to, get people to focus because they're engrossed in the story that's being told, but then they're also learning things and they may not even realize it until they're done. My amazing mentor, Wendy Cohen, when I was at Picture Motion, would always say it was like putting the spinach in with the popcorn. And that really is kind of what it's like in terms of social impact sometimes, because uh, it works. People are so moved. They may go in being like, it's just a documentary. I'm at this film festival. Let's see what all this is about. And then afterwards, they're like Googling what else is there? Is there new research? Like, what can I do? Is there a petition? I know someone who suffers from this. This helps me understand them more. And so I think, yeah, coupled with, interviews, coupled with archival footage, I think that also makes a really good case when you can actually see historically how some of these things develop, whether that's the development of a drug or a developing controversy of a condition. Yeah, there's nothing better than film for that.
Yeah, I mean, there's entertainment factor for sure. I know that that's how my brain works.
Yeah,
Get you hooked in watching and learning at the same time. And then I think that for me, the empathy factor is also a big deal. It's like if you seeing someone um walk through their story and you're finding connection with them, you're seeing how it affects them emotionally, you're mirroring their emotions and you're building empathy, which really just hooks you in to the cause and makes you more motivated to help them to take whatever the next step is.
yeah, you can read a story about a patient, right? Or like a news story, but then to see them on camera telling their story and then have them show up to the Q&A. Like we have our film subjects from Brooklyn and the Quiet Epidemic who go to a lot of the local discussions. The young woman Julia and her father Enrico, who are two of the main subjects of the film, and you see Julia at like age 11, 12, 13 in the film, and now she's this young woman in college, and she's been an advocate for like pretty much her entire life for living with Lyme disease, and people are just bowled over by, okay, like she's here, she's okay, like she's able to tell her own story and catch us up from when the film ends to what she's doing now. And that's
Wow.
really powerful too. And that speaks to the power of those discussion panels too, right? Being able to invite the film subjects to fill in the gaps or to share updates and, be able to ask questions after seeing their journey on film, to then be able to ask them those questions in person. Like people turn out for those screenings for sure, for like special guests from the film, even if it's just one of the experts in the film, like a journalist or a doctor or someone, but they're an expert in the issue area. People come.
A feature-length documentary, in case our viewers don't know, it can take a very long time,
Oh yes, oh
right? It's
yes.
like, yeah.
Years.
What about less intimidating versions of this?
Yeah,
What are the options? What do people turn out to? What do people watch in terms of like
yeah.
length and investment?
Yeah, great question. So, yeah, definitely when people hear like, oh, a screening and panel discussion, they assume it's like, it's a feature film. They might be there for a couple hours, but I'm more and more starting to talk to potential clients and filmmakers about working on short documentaries, because then you can package the whole thing in an hour, including the discussion panel. It can be, for a nonprofit, if they want to bring that film and have a discussion, that could be like a lunch and learn, or something like that, versus okay, we're doing a screening with a reception or a Q&A, and then people are just like, that's a really long time, I'm really busy. And especially in today's world, so having a 10-20 minute film, I think could still be as valuable. Yeah.
And let's talk about funding, because sometimes
Sure.
length and funding go together.
They do.
Um, one thing we had discussed before is partnerships. Um, because if it seems like a little too much to fund a film all on your own, what are some of these options? Especially with these medical ones, you probably can link a lot of people together.
Yes, absolutely. Feature documentaries can run into the tens, hundreds of thousands of dollars, especially if you have to travel and the edit and scoring and all the pieces that come together to make a very powerful film, right? So that it feels like a film and not just a piece of branded content, which people are getting savvy. They can tell the difference now. Yeah, I mean, a lot of the films that I work with get funding from foundations or wealthy individuals who, understand the value of film to do exactly what we've been talking about in this conversation, to change people's minds, to educate, to create social change. So that's increasingly common. And for that, whether they come on as an executive producer or like some kind of presentation partner, there's often conversations about, okay, well, if you give us, X amount of money, your name gets on it. Maybe you get, your logo can go on discussion materials, and you can host some free screenings. You can make them fundraisers for your own organization. So that's an incentive for those organizations and individuals to sign on to help the creation of the product, for sure.
And we often, at Make a Scene, we're often facilitating those conversations because we end up talking to so many people and we find out who's interested and be like, hey, you're both into affordable housing. Look, let's talk about the impact it has on residents and let's find something to do together. So,
Absolutely. Yeah, the
yeah,
coalition building part is so important. Some of these films will come to me and say, okay, we already, as the filmmakers, have gotten like these 3 or 4 nonprofits on board. They want to help host screenings, they want to help develop discussion materials, all of that. And I'm like, great, awesome, let's go. And then for some other campaigns, they say like, these are the types of organizations we want. And then in my job and wearing my hat as an impact producer, I go and try to lock in those partners for a variety of different things. And it's really great because you can offer them, be a screening host, or you can have someone from your organization sit on one of our like big tastemaker screenings, in LA or New York or whatever it is, and get visibility. And that's a way for you to talk about your organization, because those organizations are the ones doing the work on the ground. The film is really a tool for them to further their own endeavors and their own programs.
So I know that a lot of communications and marketing departments, the word social media comes up all of the time. So if screenings isn't part of the plan, or in addition to screenings, what are some social media strategies that we can share with nonprofits to help video get traction?
Sure. So one of my favorite things is doing either like Instagram or Facebook Lives with the partners, or Instagram takeovers with partners to further awareness of their organization through the films or the production companies social media channels, because we know that the people following are interested in the issue because they're interested in the film, but they may not know about all these amazing organizations and individuals that are doing that work. So for Quiet Epidemic, we actually did a bunch of giveaways on Instagram, actually, with authors and people in the space who have materials like tick mitts and journals and things like that for living with Lyme disease or prevention of. And so that was another really cool way to elevate smaller groups and organizations working in the space. And then we actually have an Instagram takeover happening on Monday with a screening host in Savannah, Georgia, she's a college student hosting her own screening. So she's going to do like a day in the life and what it's like to be living with Lyme disease as a college student. And she's just fantastic. So we're really just scratching the surface of what we can do there.
Forgive me, I don't fully know what an Instagram takeover is. Could you
Okay.
explain?
Yes. Okay. So an Instagram takeover, we're literally like giving the keys to someone else for the day. Make sure it's someone you trust. Make sure it's someone who is, respectful of your, the community that you've built on social media. We have no doubt that this young woman will be a tremendous asset and advocate for Lyme disease for the day, using our Instagram. But yeah, we literally like share the login information with her, and she's on her own phone on our account for that whole day. Sure, there's boosted posts, there's ads. That's becoming increasingly part of what you have to do for social media marketing. So that's my advice for anyone. Just set aside a little bit of a budget for that, just to increase visibility of your posts and your stories outside of your own followers, because I've seen the numbers when you don't anymore. And let's just say you should.
So with documentary being a bit of a little bit of an investment, even if it's a shorter documentary and one day of filming or with archival and stuff like that, it's still an investment. And for people hesitant to make that investment, um, they're probably also getting other stakeholders asking, how much of an impact will it have? How will we know? Or if it's a grant funded situation, the grant is asking for some measurement of the impact. How are you measuring that impact for your clients?
Great question. And definitely very logical question, in terms of what, like, why should we fund this? So my my favorite thing to do as part of impact measurement is these post-screening surveys that we have at all of our screenings. We've started to now project a QR code during the Q&A that just brings people to the Google form so people can fill it out during the Q&A. Very simple. Takes only a few minutes to do. And that's the best way to do this. We say it's like measuring stories with stories, because people want to share their stories once they see someone else's story. They feel moved. They want to say, okay, this is how this impacted me. And yeah, it's more qualitative than quantitative, depending on how many people are at a given screening. But being able to say, this is how this piece of content moved someone. This is the action that they're going to take now that they've seen this film or this short or this, small video. Like, that's huge. That, and we also always base the post-screening survey on the calls to action. So, how likely are you after seeing the film to send a letter to your congressman about funding for X subject? And like we like, not likely, maybe, like very likely, so we can also measure the calls to action and engagement that way. How likely are you to tell a friend or family member that they should join a clinical research study? Like, that was a huge part of the Turning Point campaign. And a lot of people were like, yeah, I am far more invested in like either considering or signing up for a clinical trial myself, having seen this film that explained why they're so important. We did some big public screenings and we would literally just print them out and have them fill them out in the room, because we were doing screenings at like nursing homes and senior community centers and things like that. So not everyone had a mobile phone. So there's always that accessibility issue, and just making it as easy as possible for your audience. But then the other thing too is measuring counting the number of people that go to these screenings. If you've had 5 or 6 screenings that have over 200 people in them, you've got something, like, you've got a winner on your hands, that people are turning out for, that they're making time for when everyone is so busy. So that's another thing too, is just how many people have actually seen this film at just the screening tour. You don't have to have these screenings in a movie theater. That's what people, when they think like, oh, a screening, they're like, oh, well, there's this movie theater in my town, but it costs like $500 to rent it out. That's okay. You can partner with your library, and maybe, the organization can host it at the library, because then you get your mailing list and the library's mailing list, and you can fill up a room that way. Or nonprofits oftentimes have meeting rooms or places that people can come in for screenings. Colleges and universities, high schools, even if they're not the actual screening host, like we've had nonprofits who don't have their own space say, oh, we're going to use the local high school auditorium because it's really great, they have great projection, and we can fill it, and they're only going to charge us like $100 or it's free or something like that. I do a lot. I do all the outreach. I'm the person that the screening host contacts and talks with. I'm the one sending the film, the postcards for the calls to action, the links to the surveys, the little slide with the QR code to the survey that you project on top. I'm there to troubleshoot, to answer questions, and to explain how we've done it in the past, because this may be someone's first rodeo, but it's not mine. I've seen it all, and they're always amazing and successful and unique to the screening host. And also they'll sometimes, who should we invite to our screening panel? I'm like, okay, well, you're in this part of the country. Here's one of our partners. Let me see if they want to be on your panel. Or we don't know anyone in the area, but here are the types of people we recommend having on panels. So all of that as well. And then sometimes screening hosts will even pay to bring the filmmaker and have them on the panel as well.
Well, how can people find you to hire you for all these wonderful services that you're doing?
Sure. So I have a website. It's khalibozekconsulting.com. Hopefully, Heather, you can like put it.
I'll put it up on the screen.
Yeah. And my email address too is kate@khalibozekconsulting.com, but there's also a comment box on the website. And would love to hear from you. Yeah, I can run the soup to nuts campaign for you. I can help develop the strategy and then implement it as like a 2-phase process. I also offer like packages of consulting hours, really just based on your budget and what you need. Would love to hear from you to see how we can work together, because I just truly believe in the power of storytelling to create social change. And I love working with nonprofits because you're the ones who are doing that mission driven work already, and the film is just a way to help, a way to help further your your programs and your mission. So absolutely would love to hear from anyone interested in connecting to learn more.
Absolutely. Video is an amplifier. You
Absolutely.
guys are doing the work. Let's let some more people know about it.
Yes.
Well, thank you so much for joining us.
Oh my gosh, my pleasure. Thank you.
So excited to change the world with you.
Yes, looking forward to it.